Welcome to the IRONMAN Insider, presented by Martin, where we dive into the grit, the grind, and the glory of endurance racing. I'm your host, Matt Lieto. And whether you're a seasoned triathlete, an aspiring age grouper, or just love the stories of incredible human resilience, I think you're in the right place. And as we get close to the start of our 2025 Pro Series season, I thought no better guest to have on than our 2024 IRONMAN Pro Series champion and consistency incarnate, Kat Matthews. And it's pretty easy to see Kat just as who she is as her current self. But there's much more to her story, from her journey as a physiotherapist in the British Army to standing on some of the biggest podiums in long distance triathlon, with some major hurdles along the way that we'll hopefully chat about a little bit today in the pod. She has become one of the most formidable athletes in the sport, and she's only been a full-time professional for about 5 years. So today, I'm super excited to catch up with her from her training camp in Lanzarote, where she's getting ready to defend her Pro Series title, among some other pretty ambitious goals this season. Kat Matthews, welcome to the Insider. Appreciate you coming on.
Hi, thanks for having me on there. Yeah, I actually am a bit nervous about talking about racing. As you said, it's barely touched February here, so
Right.
yeah, not sure I'm ready for this.
Is it is the off season always go by quickly, or it seems like this year, obviously, I mean, our world championship was just before Christmas, so I imagine off season felt like it went by in a flash this year.
Yeah, I think I have a different perspective on the phrase off season
Yeah.
to most people. I feel like lots of people see it as that whole, you have like November and December and it's just like relaxed and you do what you want. I feel very much like I go on holiday and then I have a period of time where I'm training without an upcoming race, and that's my off season. Like I feel like January, this camp is like February, it's like developing me. It's very much like off season. Like I had a burger for lunch. I might have a drink at the end of camp, like
Yeah.
it's very focused, but it's very relaxed. So it doesn't go quickly because I deliberately don't want it to go quickly. The holiday season goes very quickly, and I partied a bit too hard this Christmas, I think, and I'm still paying for it. So, yeah.
Well, it feels like it was probably, warranted to party a little bit. Long season, and obviously getting that first Ironman Pro Series win, a little bit of extra money in your pocket, so probably had some things to celebrate.
Yeah, no, I was really chuffed to win the Pro Series, and it's actually really exciting to be able to be like, yeah, cool, the first ever win, and now I get to try and do it all again, but better. And yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely needed a break. I didn't think I realized I did. I sort of was maybe a bit blasé about, or I decided I had to be. I didn't allow myself the freedom to be mentally tired or weak. Yeah,
Right.
I had to pretend that it was fine. And then actually when the break came after Taupo, I was, yeah, really needing it.
That's awesome. And that's great because I wanted to talk about the off season, and I think how that like term has, and you can't say off season without doing like the big air quotes these days, I think, right? Because it means so much to so many different people. And it sounds like, and I know for me, it was a physical break. And back in the day, the ancient days when I was racing, it was like, we used to say you have to get like unfit before you can get fit again. And that was kind of a very different mentality than it is now. But I feel like I needed the mental break, and that was the more important thing. And it sounds like for you, yes, there's physical rest, and there is structure, but it seems like you're taking it easier on yourself. You're trying to enjoy the day to day a little bit better.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to explain. And I guess that's what, like you said, it's so individual. I'm not convinced about this, like, you need to get unfit to
Yeah.
get fit again. I, I don't know. I feel like I'm personally, and this is like you say, you can't talk for everybody, but I'm a person who doesn't, I want to get better every year. I don't just want to get unfit to then get fit again to race, to get unfit again and not make improvements. Like every year I like, what motivates me is making those improvements. So I don't want to get unfit, but I do believe there is a mental toll. And that break, like you say, mentally is so individual. And I actually find I've probably done it right if I then really struggle after the break. I feel like, therefore, I've shown that the break was a real off switch.
Right.
and then I'm really struggling to get back into it because I did actually turn off. I think if everything's flying straight after the break and you're really motivated, like everything's just like perfect, I think maybe the break wasn't long enough. I don't know, but again, that's so mental, and you never know until the end of the season. Not you don't know at the start.
Totally. That's the brutal part is you don't really know if you kind of hit the recipe right until you're in the middle of the season or until you're not
Yeah.
able to push through.
And I mean, actually, a good example is last year, as in my last sort of Christmas period. I had a disaster in Kona 2023 and rolled
Yeah.
straight into, I had I guess I had a break then. It was an emotional break for a
Right.
few weeks. And I did November training well, I did December, I raced, and then I went straight into January and just like gung ho, and we raced in March all the way through to December. So I didn't have a break, and yet that was my most consistent, successful season. So I don't think there's one right way or a rule or how to do it.
Right, because then sometimes you roll into it, and if you take a big off season, sometimes people will do less racing and not taper in and recover out. So sometimes I look at your schedule last year and it was crazy. You had so many races, but you have to rest in and rest out. So sometimes you're building in a little bit, kind of as that season goes, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So as you build, and you're in Lanzarote right now, is that right?
yeah.
And do I say it like an American? Is it Lanzarote? Is it Lanzarote? How do we say it?
I'm British,
I want to know how British
so
say
I'll
it.
say it like Lanzarote.
There you go, Lanzarote. Love it. Is there, like, kind of continue what we've been talking about? Are there things that you do in training camp that allow you to mentally still be chill and recovering, so to speak, as you're building into, racing an Ironman in just a few months? Like, just being in Lanzarote, is that part of it? It's relaxing, it's less stress, like that sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't think it's being here specifically because I actually I've come here for like a world champs build before, so it's not specifically being here. I think it's finding an environment like for us here that you're able to just relax, and training sort of sessions are it's very efficient. I can see the swimming pool. There's no commute.
No
It's
way.
just in and out. And then you start your, bike computer from the second you leave the hotel. So every minute is quality riding, and it's a great warm up. It's like 20 minutes uphill done. You're ready to go, whatever the session.
Awesome. Yeah.
And again, the running, you can run, it's not the best, but you can just run straight from the hotel. So I think it's not necessarily, one specific thing. I think for me, it's the training efficiency. I get back, it's like 2, 3 p.m. and I know I just eat and lie in bed for 2 hours and then go again. So it's just, yeah, the buffet life is also efficient as well. So, and it's good. It's good for morale having everyone, groups of people around as well. So I think it's a mixture of having people here and having really efficient training means that you can get lots of endorphins out of doing really good training, but also you can chill out as well.
That's great. So now, obviously, the thing that stands out to me most is the buffet. So I need to know more about the buffet. Is it open from a certain period of time? Because there was a hotel I was sponsored by in Kona years ago, and the buffet was open till like 10:30, and it opened at 6 a.m. So I'd go hit it as much as I can, go do as long a ride as I could before 10:30, and then just like as they're shutting it down, put as much in my mouth as possible. Is that what you guys
Yeah,
got going on?
nice. A little bit, but more sociable hours. as in, the buffet is open till 10:30, but I'll only have done a swim first before 10:30. So, yeah, I tend to. You could go to the buffet first, then swim, then go to the buffet for a full breakfast. There is a
Right.
lunch buffet, and I think there's only like 2 hours of the day when there's not food. So hit 6:30 and the dinner buffet. Like we are at the doors waiting to go in. A nice, an hour, good old 3 or 4 courses, chill chat at dinner, and ready to go the next day.
Love it. And are you? Can I ask what your like buffet routine is? Like, do you go check out what the desserts are before you like fill up the main plate, or like what's your go to? What's your go to?
Um, Depends on the day, depends on what training I've done. But I'll often do a quick scope of the main sort of, for me, meat options around the
Yeah.
buffet. and then go to the sort of starter section, like the salads and the nice fruit and veg that I can then get in my micronutrients, so then I can just eat what I want in the main course of sort of meat and carbs. The puddings don't really do it for me here, which is a bit sad, but there's always like a really good little convenient shop, so you can always get whatever you want after dinner as well.
There you go.
There's always fresh fruit, so I think I try and make the most of actually eating quite easily, healthily here, as well as all the other, I don't want to call it bad because it's not, the calorie nutrient denser food.
Yeah, totally. No, I love that because I can picture it, because we've all done it, right? You grab your plate and you're just like kind of like scanning. You got to plan. Like, I know people that just go in there and start filling the plate up. I'm like, man, you got to like plan this thing ahead.
I'm actually a bit rogue. I think I'm a fill the plate up sort of person. I sort of sample everything, and I have about 8 different things. Like tuna might be next to a piece of chicken, and that's fine. That's fine with me. Yeah.
I love it. It is funny though, and it is, people might go, and I kind of joke about like eating too many treats or whatever. But it's funny. The hardest thing for me as an athlete, when I was like cooking for myself, when you're in a build, is like, dude, I burnt 5,000 calories today. Like, making healthy, nutrient dense 5,000 calories a day for yourself is like pretty exhausting. So it's way easier to like go to the treats and do all that stuff just to get the calories in. Where when you're at a buffet like this, to your point, I kind of actually end up eating a lot healthier, because like so much good food is like right there ready for you.
I think, and again, isn't it so individual? I think recently I've started fueling during my sessions so much more that I'm not hungry, and I really don't want bad food. I don't want sugar. I just want plain meat and veg and like fresh salad, like nice things, because I eat so much sugar during the day that I find I don't want it, and I don't need it as much as well, because if you are actually eating a lot of sugar, your calorie deficit isn't actually that high for some, considering like power differences with different people and different body sizes. Sure. But yeah, obviously I'm not an expert, and that I speak only for myself in those situations.
No, that's awesome. I appreciate that. And it is, sometimes it's a difficult topic to talk about. I always feel like I want to talk about it with you, because I think we see eye to eye on that, and kind of where the sport can be, and the pressures on, being a certain body style or eating a certain way and all that. And, I used to be quite overweight before I started racing. And when I started racing, I was still the guy that people were like, they'd yell, "Hey, good job, big fella." And I'm like, "Big fella?" I'm like, I'm like as skinny as I get. Exactly. If I knew that hand gesture, I would have used it. But we all, it's about being healthy when you hit the start line, and being the person that can dig to the bottom of the well, and do so because you've treated your body right, and you're running on what your body runs well off. And that's one thing I noticed with you in racing, is that, I talked about a couple of weeks ago in a podcast with Craig Alexander, and this wasn't just to get you on the podcast. We weren't just like shining you on because I wanted to get you on the podcast. It was genuine. But point was, like I said, it was kind of always, you were the favorite to win this series, in my opinion, because of your consistency. And for me, that consistency comes off the fact that, like, I don't think I've ever, some races outlying, like you said, that Kona disaster, where I never see you degrade, right? Like, you seem like you get to the start lines to a point where you then can lean on your determination. I call it stubbornness at times. That was, I think, a strength. I think stubbornness in racing, pain tolerance, is a positive thing. And I feel like you can lean on that because you are always ready to go at the start line, because you give your body what it needs, and you're not stressing about kind of these other factors.
Thank you. I actually think the sport is in a really good place at the moment in terms of health and performance before aesthetics.
Yeah.
And it's been really cool to see that change over the last 5 years, I think, especially with the, COVID layer, like just things changed, I think, or science developed enough and it was then publicized well. And I think, I think it's also really fascinating though, because obviously there is some science in performance at, a lower body fat percentage, and it's so individual, and we base our judgment on aesthetics. We're not, there's nobody walking around with a body calipers. And I think that's what's fascinating is our perception of someone's physique based off how they look in like pretty nasty lycra. But yeah, back to your compliment about the consistency sort of thing, like not degrading. I actually think that's this year have decided it's a weakness that I want to change. I'm bored of myself, like being so conservative, because I think, except for, like you say, a couple of odd scenarios, I think I'm always too conservative. Like I dread blowing up too much that I then always, I'm happy to eat my words, underperform. And so, yeah, that's the goal this year, is to be a bit more brave, less consistent.
I love that. And as soon as you started that, I kind of knew where you were going. And I love that because you're never a person that seems to shy away from challenging yourself. Like obviously you came off of a season where you won the first Pro Series and the first thing you said was, God, I didn't get all the points, right? And you're like, yeah, I'm consistent. So, but I get it, because there is a theoretically, and I'm not saying this about you, but theoretically, if you're consistent, you're never really putting yourself out there to fail. And to win a world championship, you have to be against the fields that are out there now. You have to be okay with failing.
Yeah. And what I like is that I have failed. It's not like therefore I'm not scared to fail. So it's not like, oh, I never fail. I can't do that. I can't risk it. I have failed quite catastrophically previously, but not down to, I don't know. I think we just tell ourselves these things to try and motivate ourselves or push ourselves in areas. It's probably rubbish, and I'll be just as consistent and maybe slightly better, who knows, or slightly worse in some races. And I think you just have to find your own little mental battles to push yourself.
No, I love it. And I mean, I think, there'll be maybe people scoffing at maybe, I think in the US we call it sandbagging. But it's like, oh, she's been on what, 4 Ironman 70.3 total podiums, 4 world championship podiums, right? 270.3 to Ironman. And, saying that you haven't put yourself out there, obviously I know where you're coming from, and that's you wanting to continue to challenge yourself. And I think that's awesome. But my question would be, if you're looking at the metrics and the data, do you look at your races and be like, yeah, I didn't put myself out there?
Yeah.
No way. That's awesome.
Except for a couple that you wouldn't expect. Like a random race last year in the 2100 series. I'd just come off Ironman Victoria Gasteiz, which I had to do, or wanted to do for the Pro Series. So it was a race. Rolled into T100 London, and my performance data, like my heart rate was crazy high in that race. I hung on with absolutely everything I had, but probably because I didn't really push myself in the Ironman 2 weeks before, because I was just doing it to be the most efficient I could do it. Yeah, for the point. Yeah. So yeah, it was last year was quite cool to look back on and analyze. And things like San Francisco, it was 6 days after Ironman Hamburg, which was like a real goal for me. It was the first time I'd done it, and I'm going back there this year. I really want to do well there. There is also an Ironman best ever time there to be had. And I was so angry with myself that I just rolled straight into San Francisco and just destroyed that in terms of my own sort of performance data. But those races don't really stand out. So
Yeah.
it's because they were just, B races or whatever. So
Right.
it's, yeah, interesting.
And I was looking through. I think you probably know this. I don't do hardly any research, but I did a little bit this morning. And just it's not so much research, but like reminding myself of some things. And one thing that stood out to me, and obviously tons of wins. There's a lot. I'm impressed by you and your career and your resiliency. But this year, right now, I have. I wanted to talk about Nice, and I have Nice down there, and I just wrote down swim and then your time and then WTF. Like that that swim was bananas. And like obviously you're capable of it because you did it, but in that case, like was that you at the start line being like, I just need to do everything? Like was that you pushing yourself in the way you want to push yourself across the board this next year?
Yeah. That whole year, I went into every race thinking, well, not every race, but the most important races that had that sort of tactical element to it. The swim is the only thing that matters here. And I obviously raced quite a few of the 100-kilometer race that the swim really, really matters. It's the most important part of the race. So I think
Yeah.
I took that mentality all the way through, and it finally paid off in Nice in a way. So it wasn't like I did anything special. I knew I had
Right.
really good swimming form in training. I know I'm really comfortable in the sea, as opposed to, some people don't like it compared to a lake. I sort of grew up as a kid like bodyboarding, body surfing, that sort of stuff in cold old Wales. Um, and so I think, yeah, it was a mixture of everything. Plus just the situation. Sometimes with
Yeah.
open water, you do get lucky. And I think I had all of it playing in my favour. And actually, I lost the group. I think I dropped that 15 seconds or something in that last 500 meters. I think maybe some of the girls were after the swim bonus, first out the water. So there was a
Right.
bit of a surge that I either didn't have or decided I couldn't be bothered to play in because I'd just get them in transition was, I guess, probably something that went through
Sure.
my mind at 45 minutes in. But no, the swim I'm stoked with. And I think it's something that, so I've been full-time training for 5 years,
Yeah.
and every year I'd like to think that my swim has got better, minus the COVID era year. And then even with the accident with my neck and my back, and I still managed to sort of keep it at the same level and then step it up again. So I'm hopeful that this year the front pack is still the goal, but to be confident in saying that, not as a sort of ridiculous goal, because I don't think it
Right.
was. I was trying to achieve the front pack, but it was a bit of a stretch goal, and I probably wouldn't have said it publicly because people would have just rolled their eyes at me. Whereas now it's like, yeah, I'm going to try and be there every race.
Yeah, I mean, you swam a 49 something at World Champs. Like that is fast, fast swimming. And like you're talking about, you lost 15 seconds because maybe some women were going after the preem. Like you're talking about Lauren Brandon and Zelinskis and like the fastest swimmers in the sport, and you only lost 15 seconds to them. They were going as fast as they could so they could get their airline money for the way home.
Yeah,
But
there's a couple of other faster swimmers that will, I'm
of
sure,
course.
play in the future.
Of course, but yeah, no, I mean, it's super impressive, and it's one of those things. Like I know I was going crazy in the boat in Nice, like you were the one that stood out, and then obviously seeing your gap to Laura was important, and I was freaking out. But it's one of those things where it's not, you say people would have rolled their eyes, and maybe, but we all know like being in the sport and seeing people grind. Like I know you're in the pool and you're doing the splits that are necessary for you to be in that front pack. But open water swimming there's so much happening. There's so many dynamics that everything for where you're at in your history of swimming, especially only swimming or training full time for 5 years, all of it you have to make every right choice and things have to fall in your favor for you right now to make the front pack. And what you're saying is you need to work harder so that one or two of those things can maybe not totally go your way and you can make the front pack.
Yeah, totally. So it's never like, cool, settling. This year, the the bike is taking a focus at the moment, but I know that I can't let anything drop in the swim because I can't afford to be going into the biggest races and with too big of a deficit there.
Yeah, no, I think that's right and that's smart. Yeah, and let's just talk about Nice for a little bit, because that was obviously a big race of the year. What when you look back at that race, what did you learn out of that race that you feel like put you in a better space to maybe win a world championship in the next couple of years?
It's hard to talk about
Yeah.
because it still hurts a little bit. The biggest thing I learned, the problem with publicly discussing your race performances is that after time has passed, it just sounds like excuses. And I really despise that. I really, it's like that was the best I had on the day given the circumstances. So anything that I say now is caveated with, that was my best performance. But
Yeah.
I think I really made some really basic errors. I didn't calculate a couple of things. One, I won't share, but two, things like electrolytes. I just misinterpreted or miscalculated how hot that climb would be. And
Right.
obviously the air temperature is not that hot, but the situation was like weirdly humid, I think.
Was it a bit of a tailwind going up that climb?
Also,
Maybe.
couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
So all in all, I had a few errors with my hydration, balance, and electrolytes, and fueling. I had a couple of logistical errors there, which I didn't rectify. And I have had issues in the past and I've been able to rectify them. But in this race, I didn't. And all of that made me suffer because, like we were talking about before, the performance data, like I've got all of it. I did not overbike. And obviously you get
Right.
40 minutes of rest going downhill. I came off the bike so excited, so confident. My run train, I was like primed.
Yeah.
And on another day, in the future years, I hope to give Laura a much better battle, and I think she'll welcome that too. But the lesson from all of that is that no matter what the race, those tiny little details need just as much attention. And I think I just got a bit lazy, which is ridiculous in a world championship. So I'm embarrassed.
Well, I appreciate that humility, obviously, and know that I hate excuses as much as the next person. So I'm never going to talk to somebody and set them up to put excuses on the table. And I know you're not one that's putting excuses on the table. But for me, like, I hear everything you're saying and you're totally right. You, just like we said with the swim, everything has to kind of fall in line. You have to check all those boxes to win a world championship against the caliber of athletes that are there. And sometimes hindsight is what fills us in on those things. And that hurts probably more than, maybe not performing even, is like, damn it, like I could have maybe done better. But what I saw out of that race was, like, again, that swim was stinking amazing. And from what you're talking about on your, like, being aggressive and putting yourself out there, you did that descent was bananas. Like, I know you said it's like rest, but like mentally you still were aware enough to, like, I mean, did you get the overall QOMs on some of the sections of that descent? Don't know.
I don't know specifics. I did.
I'm
I
pretty
think
sure
I did. I think I
Mark put some
picked
stuff up.
a segment of Camworth though.
The only name that needs to be said is Camworth. Yeah, that's awesome.
No, I'm chuffed with the descent, and I took
Yeah.
confidence in that. Like it fills me with pride that I can handle my bike properly.
Yeah, no, there's nobody can doubt that. That's for sure. And I mean, like, Laura was, Xterra racer, like, she knows how to handle a bike. So watching you two go at it was awesome. I loved it. It was the best thing ever. Excited to see it down the road. So just quickly, I want to chat about, because I think it's so easily for people to see you as the performer that you are, someone that wins the Pro Series and says, I don't know. I need to try to get a perfect score next year. And like getting world championship silver medals isn't enough. The cream of the crop, the top in the sport. And then here you say you've only been training full time for 5 years. And like that is, I think people
four and a
early
half and broken back.
I know. This is what I'm saying, man. Like this is why
Not an excuse.
No. And why you're one of my favorites. I can't say favorite because people get mad, but one of my favorites is because of the adversity that you come back from. But the fact that like you don't call upon that, you don't tell people about that you've only been doing it for a certain period of time. But I guess my point is people see you in the same light as they would see the Norwegians that have been doing it since they were 12. And you haven't. And so I want to dig into that a little bit. Can you tell us kind of where, you started as an amateur, I think. Was your first win 70.3 Calgary as an amateur? Is that right?
You did do some research.
Hey, I raced Calgary. It's a good race. I always keep my eye on Calgary. But
yeah.
Tell us about it.
Okay. Well, I'm really glad that that's your perception is that I don't talk about it very much because I just get mocked from my friends, especially the back thing. Like, oh, you broke your back.
That's what they're for. That's what they're for.
But I did some swimming as a kid, but I stopped at like 15, 16 because socially it was a bit boring. And I always did like cross country running, and in England that's like a really big deal. So I was always quite good at that until sort of again I had got a social life. But I played hockey like my whole adult life as well, as in like through university. And then I joined the army as a physiotherapist, and joining the army when I was like 23, maybe, or 24, did I started like I did a triathlon with the army. Yeah. Like it was a sort of, you can choose a sport to do and take a team and empower other people to do it with you. And awesome. I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah. Like we had never done this before, and we all just thought it was a bit of a joke. And then turned out I was quite good at it. So I was like, oh, I might do a bit more of this and actually put some effort into, getting back into the swimming pool. So yeah, in 2017, I did the age group, like World Triathlon age group standard distance.
Yeah.
And then in 2018, I did that, like the World Championships in that, maybe? I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah.
The next year, I really wanted to race, and I really wanted to win the like British World Triathlon age group standard distance race. God, they have so many words, don't they? I think USAT has the same, that age group like championship race.
100%.
But I got deployed, loosely deployed to Canada, where we have a big military base to basically practice all our sort of land-based warfare, which was obviously a little bit relevant at the time considering what's happened since. And so I couldn't race this race. And so I persuaded two mates who'd never done a triathlon before just to enter this 70.3 with me at the weekend. And that was Calgary. And I just like rocked up. I had a TT bike. I was taking it like quite seriously, as you do. And that was my first race. And then I won the national champs that year when I went home. And then next year got my pro license.
That was your first 70.3 ever, was Calgary.
Yes.
And you won the overall.
Yeah, there was no pro field.
I mean, I'm sure there were still a couple pros that showed up. They always.
I had decided that I'd run to 10K, and then I'd have to get back because I wasn't it was 10K out, 10K back, and I didn't think I could do it. So I thought I'll just get there, and then I have to run back. Yeah,
that's funny. Fun. I did Calgary once and ran to 10K, and then got a ride back.
Oh.
So
well,
you
if I'd known that.
Yeah, no, it's possible. The options are there. So that was 2016, you said?
No, 18.
18. Crazy.
And then 19 went professional. 2020 signed with BMC. COVID. 2021 semi-COVID. 2022 raced really well. Got injured. Missed Kona. Yeah, all the drama.
That's insane.
So yeah, I had a good year last year. My first good year.
I love it. And to me, that's what's crazy is when I do my research, like I said, that I did tons of, like 7 minutes this morning, and I look at the years, it's like, oh no, she turned pro like 2020. And then I look and it's, you can't look back in history and say that you have the success like in spite of these things. Like it's possible you've had some of this success because the COVID year was different. Like you can never look back and say you changed things, right? You would assume that you not breaking your back, you would have been better off. Like we can't really say that, right? Because to me, what's amazing is that in that short period of time, you had some serious hurdles, and breaking a back is usually a career ender. Like we all hope that you're going to come back and it's going to be a thing, but it's like you're a professional at swimming, a lot of movement of the head, TT bike, like looking your head up, being as aero as possible. Like generally, you're not going to be able to get back to where you were. So was it that history and schooling and knowledge and maybe what you saw as a physio that allowed you to be confident that you could come back, or just your grittiness in general? Or how, like, to me, it is the only word I can use is astonishing that you were, I remember, and I get goosebumps as I say this, seeing you walking on a Lee drive with the freaking thing. And actually get emotional because it's to see an athlete that puts everything into going after their dreams, and see in that moment, it seemed like that wasn't going to be a thing for you. Right. And seeing you in that space, and then like 6 months later, you're like doing the thing and you're back at it. Like, tell me how that happens.
Yeah. I think it's easier not to think about it. No, that sounds like I haven't psychologically dealt with it, which I am confident I have, or
Yeah.
I'm where I need to be. I do think being a physiotherapist, having a degree in physiotherapy, really helped. I think alongside that, as elite athletes, we are so in tune with our bodies, that but we are so aware, and I think that entwined with the knowledge and the ability to go and like read research and critically analyze research, not just what does Instagram tell me I need to do because of this, like, or what does Google say? It's like I'm critically analyzing the, return to play for this type of fracture in this position sort of thing. And I'm aware that this load, I could achieve this load in a different way, or so I think definitely the sort of rehabilitation side of things helped. I think the psychology of it was massive. And I guess at some point I sort of decided it was just like, I'm going to be really great at being the best patient I can. That became the challenge, to be to recover the best. Obviously that's not tangible and you can't compete against other people in that. But I found it, I guess, a competition with myself. Like, how good can I do this? And that there's so many aspects that came into that. The main one was my husband, Mark, and he was either blasé or just his natural oozing confidence of, yeah, you'll be fine. You can walk. So I reckon you'll be fine. And then there was no doubt in his mind that he ever let me see. And I think having someone constantly reassure you every hour of every day, rubs off on you. So I think there's a massive part of that. I also had a really great physio that I saw separately, who when I saw her week, I don't know, maybe 8, I was back. I'd taken my brace off myself because I think accepting that the doctors aren't going to take the risk. This is not advice. This is my own experience. Accepting that the doctors won't take your risk is something that really hurt me. As in, it was really hard not to be told at 7 weeks exactly, you can do X. At 8 weeks, you can do X. And I didn't realize, I guess, I naively thought that that would be a doctor-led process, but no doctor was going to tell me,
Right.
oh yeah, you can go and do an Ironman. No way on earth would a doctor advise me to take the brace off a week early or start moving my neck past, like at 4 weeks, not 6 weeks, not 8 weeks until I'd had an x-ray. I think the most I ever had from a doctor was, well, it hasn't collapsed, my spine. And I was like, oh, so that's good? They were like, yeah, you can just crack on. I was like, oh, well, I'm already swimming. They were like, you're already swimming? And I was like, yeah, it doesn't hurt. And so I think taking ownership and taking my own
Yeah.
risk was the biggest thing I learned there. But the psychology of seeing that physio, sorry for that tangent, was
No.
that she was like, so when are you racing?
Rad.
And I was like, hey, can we just calm down a little bit? Like my bones haven't healed yet. I haven't seen a consultant. Like what are you saying? She was like,
Yeah.
well, it'd be good to have a little bit of a timeline before, we can work back. So if you decide you're going to race here 8 weeks before the race, what sort of load we need to be looking at, and then So I went home and I did a nice, pretty Excel spreadsheet, and I think again understanding the athlete side and physio side of like load progression, I was able to go back to my coach and say, right, if I want to race in Texas, which is already a bit ridiculous, I need to be achieving, in my mind, at least 20 hours a week in January. And if I can't put 20 hours a week back together, back to back to back without problems, then what's the next step? Then I can't hit February goals and March goals. I can't be back
Yeah.
running and I can't do a marathon. So that was really useful, having that like a really good physio. And there's not many out there, despite the degree.
Right.
So yeah, that was a long. I'm not even sure I
No,
answered the question,
no,
but
you did. And I
I
mean,
don't. I don't know how I did it.
yeah, I mean, that's, and obviously your, what I spoke of earlier. And again, I get in arguments with people about, I'm trying to bring stubbornness into vocab as a positive thing. And so I think in that case, your stubbornness and just like, unwillingness to not succeed, I guess maybe is a better example, and mark support and physio support. And to me, like I've had a ton of injuries as well in my career and post career. And that challenge for you and not having, and it happens all the time. Like there'll be like 8 to 12 weeks or whatever. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, tell me why. And then we'll sit down and have like a bargaining on where we're going to end up with. But the challenge I imagine with you is that, I always tell athletes that I coach or help that the quickest way forward is no steps back. And you kind of want to have someone that's a professional be like, you cannot do this, right? And then you do everything else until that point when they say you can do that, and then you start doing that, then you move forward, right? And not having those bookmarks, I imagine, was a
Yeah,
struggle, but it sounds like the physio helped down the road.
yeah. It was really hard. I actually remember really distinctly hitting my 12-week point that I had set for myself, which was like 90 minutes on the bike and a 30-minute run. Something like that. Being able to swim 3K. I think I'd hit that at 10 weeks. So the obvious thing to do there is to go, sweet, I'm going to push on. And
Yes.
I remember specifically sitting down with my coach saying, I don't want to make any improvement in the next 2 weeks. I want to just maintain this. So then I'm ready, even more ready to build upon the next month. And I think that was really, I don't know how crucial, but I think it was really crucial.
Oh, I'm going to say right now, bookmark it. Everybody that's listening, go back and listen to that, because that's it, right? Because you get ahead of yourself. And even when you hit peak performance, if you hit numbers you've never hit before and you say, oh, sweet, let's go more. It's like, no, you go back a little bit or you stay there and then you go. Like your body
Yeah,
can't always just be adapting and increasing, even though your head theoretically can. So yeah, that's, I imagine,
yeah,
usually important. And like your performance is out of that 70.3 Oceanside. I didn't watch the
yeah,
race because I was like, whatever. And I'm like, holy crap, she got third. That's insane.
yeah.
Insane.
That I hadn't really decided if I wanted to do that yet. I wasn't emotionally ready, I don't think. But I think my coach Bjorn Giesman at the time and Mark, they both just encouraged me to get on with it, I think. And
So awesome.
yeah, it was cool to do, and it gave me a lot of confidence, obviously, then going into an Ironman. So it was definitely the right decision. But I think I shouted at one point, "I'm not fit enough for this." Like I was like dying and running so much slower than I knew that I had previously.
Yeah. And I mean, and to me, again, when I saw that, I thought back to the person I saw on Elite Drive and like the fact that, like, as positive a person I am, you're like, man, who knows where that's going to go. And for you to be there in April and then what, just 3 weeks later, like that result in Texas wasn't even a, oh, she did that because she only went this fast because she was like recovering. It's like you ran a 2:49. Like, come on, dude. Are you kidding?
Yeah, I didn't bike very hard. I couldn't. I don't know why. I was useless on the bike, so I think that's why I ran so well. But yeah, that was a bit mad. I think that was just pure adrenaline and like emotion fueling that.
Dude, it's crazy. And I mean, I think that's one of the reasons I appreciate you so much is that, like, and again, this year you kind of had the same thing. Did you not like tear your calf in March or April and then still won Ironman Texas?
Yeah, that was a that weirdly enough, I could talk about injuries all day and the psychology of them, but the unpredictability of something like that happening makes you have so little faith in your body that it just throws your entire sort of perception of what it is to be strong, and to be a functioning human, let alone like a Ironman athlete.
Yeah.
Like the calf thing really hurt in terms of like mentally, like emotionally having to deal with that at the start of. I just announced I was going to do this stupid year of like 12 races, and I DNF my first one because of something that I couldn't predict. Like there was nothing in training that I could see, and going into Texas was I got out my spreadsheet and created a run walk program that I thought was physically possible. And I basically said, if I'm not doing this by 3 weeks before the race, I don't think it's workable. And by 2 weeks before the race, I think I had a run day back to back, because obviously that's quite a lot of run load for
Yeah.
for a newly torn calf. And then that went fine. So we were like, fine, we're going to fly and see what happens. But it wasn't ready for it, and it was a bit rogue. I think I ran like nearly 3 hours or something. So with like run walk. So I don't know how much walking time, but yeah, not my best experience.
But yeah, it's still amazing that you were able to get through there. And I think, you talking about like, to me, I've had a lot of injuries as well, and we could probably sit here and talk about injuries all day long. But the calf injury is like, it's such, I can't use the word I want to, but it messes with your mind because you never felt anything before, and then you're racing and it goes like this. And you're like, who knows if that's going to the same exact, like you're just waiting for it to happen in your next couple races,
Yeah,
right?
I know. And then every training run back, obviously you don't want to ever feel it. So you're never able to push and test, because if you test
Yeah.
and it goes wrong, then like you don't, like you said right at the beginning, you said about like not making,
Steps
you don't
back.
want any back steps. Yeah. So with anything like tendony or bony, it's so hard because tendons can flare and then resettle. But with calves, if you tear it again, you've really messed it up. Same with like twisting an ankle. And so it's this constant like pushing it. It was fine, but am I doing enough? Push it. Am I doing enough? Am I doing it? And you're battling against yourself. I actually found a really, it's like a bit of a, I don't know, mind trick. In a book I was reading at the time. And basically I decided every time I went for a run, I would put, I'm sharing too much here. It's going to give one of my competitors an advantage. I would put all the anxiety or any sensations that were under, 2 or 3 out of 10, any of that anxiety, just put it in an envelope and put it on the shelf. And then I wasn't allowed to open the envelope at all during the run. I know that sounds a bit bizarre, and
No.
maybe I didn't explain it very well, but it was this idea of like, you have to accept that and get on with it. Even though something else could happen, you can't let that affect what is actually happening. And that really helped me with that specific calf injury.
No, and I'm glad you went there because I had that feeling with you and that in particular, but and we can't go too far down this because I'm not educated enough to talk about it, but it's the nervous system is what is like the pain is your nervous system telling your body that something's going awry, right? But if you can convince your nervous system, if you know everything's good and the tissue is right and it's strong, you can convince your nervous system and chill your nervous system out and not be stressed going into it and not have like the envelope thing is great. I would always just tell athletes to run with music. Make sure you run with music. Just listen to the music, because if you're not listening to the music and singing along the music, you're going to think every time your foot strikes, and that's tricking your nervous system into not freaking stressing about it. And you hacked it. Good job.
Yeah, thanks. Some people are more prone to the anxiety, obviously, than others, but it's not a blessing in my personality.
No, but the ways that you have figured out how to get around it and work around it are a blessing, right? Like you're probably stronger because like you have those systems in place. That's awesome.
Maybe
not. Okay. So I want to talk about, because I know it's probably time for the dinner buffet to open. So we're going to let you go here soon, but we got to talk about the nearly perfect season this year, but next year we're going for, so what's the max amount of points that are on the board?
Oh, you're challenging me.
Don't worry.
I'm actually not sure if I've ever said I want the perfect score. I think I've said I want to better the score. Ultimately, I want to win the Ironman World Championships, and for the women this year, it's in Kona.
Yeah.
I also want to win the Ironman Pro Series, and so therefore, I think I have to get as close as possible to winning both Ironmans, which is 5,000 points each to start with, or at least within a couple of minutes of the winner. And then the Kona is 6,000. And then you've got 170.3 and then the 70.3 worlds. I think it would be a stretch goal for me to try and take both world titles this year. So I'm not necessarily, Marbella will be what it will be.
Yeah.
And then it's just this other 70.3, which at the moment looks like Zelam Z for me, which is 2,500 points, I think, with the world champs being 3,000.
3,000. Yep. Yeah.
Could be wrong on that.
No, you're right.
So it would be really cool to have a perfect score, but I had that going into Nice and it didn't help me win. So I'm also a little bit flexible with that. The perfect score doesn't bother me. It's at the end of the year, the win.
And it sounds like priority being that Kona World Championship.
Yeah. And I think Texas is in a good point in the year where you can prepare for it properly and then still sort of recover, like properly train for Kona again, with everything else being a little bit in the background. But yeah, who knows? Who knows? Another calf tear.
And it seemed like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but did the Pro Series add a little bit of fun to the year and like camaraderie and competition? And like, you know, I think I talked to you before Nice and you were talking about being a certain amount of minutes behind or ahead, you know, like is that a cool kind of concept that's added to the year for you guys?
I think so. I think once you've got your head around it, because when you're talking about it to start with, it does sound quite complicated. I am aware, but I think once you get your head around the simplicity of it in a way, it is really exciting. Like I do find it exciting to an extent. I think as an athlete in it, I have to focus just purely on the one race ahead of me. Whereas I know that lots of people around me are really intrigued by those statistics and, because it makes watching the race not just about, how many watts is Kat pushing? It's like, she's like 4 minutes behind so-and-so and this could happen. And I think it makes the 70.3 world champs more exciting because it's a real bonus at the end of the year in terms of points and just overall. So I think that it adds value to that race as well. But yeah, sadly, it sort of rewards consistency, which is what I started saying I didn't want. So I find it a real battle to go into some of these races like Texas and want to win it because I'm like, actually, I really want to win Kona. So I want to make sure I train as effectively for October, and I not necessarily want to win Texas, but then it's like, yeah, but you need to win it for the Pro Series. So it's very tricky, and it makes periodization or just like, training focuses really complicated in a good way. It's just an added extra.
For sure. And I guess my question, or I don't know that it's pushback, would be though that to win a world championship, like Kona and Nice, and I could be wrong, some of the other races that you're seeing, like generally, historically, non world championship races, you can theoretically, you can do what Cat can do and you can win the race. You do your best swim, your best bike, your best run, and whoever's the best on the day is going to win. In a race like Kona, it's like, no, you need to race your competitors. And somebody else, you're going as hard as you can go, and somebody goes past you. Well, I guess I can go harder. So I guess my question is, are there races in that schedule? Like, do you do a Texas and be like, okay, if I'm in a comfortable spot, I need to, like, do you have to practice for that world championship winning performance on a race day, or can that happen in training?
Tricky. Don't know. That would give too much away to whoever's at Texas.
There you go. Got it.
I think it depends. I think it so depends on the situation, doesn't it? Like how the race is going and where you are. And also, there's a lot of people racing some of these races that aren't doing the Pro Series or haven't announced they're doing the Pro Series. So you're not actually racing them in the Pro Series. So does it matter? But equally, does it then, the further you push yourself, does it mean that you're then just gaining so many points on the people who are behind you who could just crop up at the end of the season? So it's tricky.
It is. It is.
I think you just got to perform your best.
Yeah, and I did really appreciate that about you in Topa, was people were talking about the Pro Series, and obviously you given the Pro Series what it needs. But you're like, I'm here to win a world championship. Next question. I mean, you didn't say that, but like, like you could, I could sense
it sounds
that
quite
was,
confident for me.
that was it. I mean, but no, I appreciate that, because if you take the racer out of the racer, then that consistency can go away, right? If you're just trying to beat the person or be within a certain amount of minutes, you're not racing how Cat races, right?
Yeah, or any of the, the girls or guys. I think what's really cool in the female field at the moment is that I think we're sort of, we do obviously, and I'll get shot down on social media probably for this, but we do follow the trends of the males, as in, as soon as there starts to be this more aggressive racing or this like tactic change, it takes a year or two, and then we see the depth coming through in the female field. So I think it's really cool at the moment that we have got this sort of, like Kona last year, there's like a massive group coming out of the water together, really. Like everyone was so condensed. It was really cool to be part of that. Very stressful, especially with Race Ranger. Like it doesn't, I'm not going to criticize it, but it's tricky.
Sure.
And yeah, I think that's exciting. Like everyone's actually racing. And it didn't pay off for those people. Some people it pays off if you're conservative, and some people it doesn't. Like there's not one right way to do it, and we don't know that. So you gotta trust your gut, I guess, and those instincts in the moment. And they could be wrong or they could be right. You just don't know. So I think that's also, I used to hate that bit about racing, and now I sort of love it, because you can only, turn up and just do your best. And sometimes those decisions are wrong and sometimes they're right, and you reap the rewards, or you cry about it for months, like, or you just get over it and try again.
I love it. I love your attitude about it, and I mean, I think I'll agree with you on a lot of that as far as men's kind of setting the trend to a certain extent, and maybe it's, who knows, there are a lot of reasons why that might be the case. And to me, it sounds like when you were talking earlier about trying to put yourself out there, is like that's in your racing and not being consistent, is that's where I see the next shift coming possibly in women's racing, is seeing the like laid lows, like throwing a long bomb, be like, okay, well, I'm either going to win or I'm going to walk it in. And that's what it takes to win a world championship. And it seems to be the trend on the men's side. And I think we'll start seeing that a little bit more on the women's side too.
Yeah. And I mean, Lucy's done it a couple of times, right? And it's worked for her. But obviously, she starts at the front and stays at the front. So it's
Right.
slightly different, I guess, if you're coming through the field, but it's the same idea. I think it's super brave, just frigging going for it. That's
Yeah.
a new little catchphrase on this camp I'm on at the moment is just like, again, I can't really use the word, but you can guess what it is. It's like, let's frigging go for it.
Yeah.
Or like, I went for it because, that rep, you probably will be better than you think. You probably can sustain it. You probably can, we're building confidence here in a good, supportive way in the group.
I love it. I love it. Love hearing about the camaraderie and what you got going on there in Lanzarote. And so excited to see you be consistent in your not being okay with your current performances, even though they're, I think, awesome and you're always pushing yourself. And can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing all that with us.
Thanks for having me.
As always, Kat has a lot of tidbits in there. So go back there. I'm sure there's a few spots you might want to re-listen to. I think she's one of the athletes to learn the most from, just by example, in so many different ways, and her ability to bounce back from adversity, I think, is pretty amazing. So thanks so much to Kat for coming on. Had a good chat with Craig Alexander just a few weeks ago. If you haven't listened to that, go back and do so. I think that was a good one. Talked about some of Kat's performances, as we said. They were chatting with her, but also kind of the season a whole, and kind of what's the changes kind of I've seen and Craig has seen in the sport over the last few years. So I think it was an interesting conversation. So go back and listen to that one if you haven't. And to stay across all the latest Ironman and Ironman Pro Series news, follow at Ironman Try on Instagram and check out proseries.ironman.com for standings, athlete bios, episodes of A Fighting Chance, replays of races, and more. And thanks again to our presenting sponsor, Morton, the official sports performance nutrition partner of the Ironman Global Series. And all Ironman athletes have access to Morton hydrogels and solids on course in 2025. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast. And if you're sitting on the trainer, you can also watch the podcast as a video on our Ironman Triathlon YouTube channel. Thanks so much for joining us on the Ironman Insider podcast presented by Morton. And be sure to keep an eye on this space for more great conversations as we move into this exciting 2025 season ahead. I'm Matt Lieto, and thank you so much for listening in.